Hello, my name's Galena. I'm the fiancé of Joshua Lee McCollister, who was murdered on July 8th by Deunn Willis and robbed by Danielle Durand. I'm going to talk more about that fight that happened on January 25th, because if not for that fight, so much could have been different. I was terrified for my life that night. I knew from the moment I told Josh McCollister that I loved him, that my life expectancy very much probably came down. It wasn't like from the first time I held his hand, or, it wasn't about sex or anything like that. It took so little for the instigator to feel that he had lost control, that the moment I gave any indication that his control was gone, from the moment Josh gave any indication that his control was gone for either of us, our life expectancy was just, we were in so much danger. I knew more than Josh did, but he was aware of it too. I told the instigator in a text. I texted him, "Don't come here. Don't come here tonight." It was about 1 a.m. when he showed up. I shouldn't have opened that door. I freaking shouldn't have. I didn't know what else to do. I was so panicked. And when someone terrorizes you long-term, hurts you long-term, but you've always managed to walk out of the room at the end, you think maybe I can talk him down. And I was hopeful that night that I could. Because I had said, I want us to still be friends. And I know Josh wanted that too. And, the instigator had flat out said, no, that's not how this was going to work from here on out. He'd said that a few hours earlier. There was no friendship after this. There was no kindness, no kind thoughts. But still, I let him in. Josh had made dinner that night. He was a great cook. Instigator came in, and Josh very pleasantly offered to make him a plate, and he set himself to doing that. I had to go to the bathroom. Instigator was not in the house for 5 minutes, not even 5 freaking minutes, and I heard the baby screaming suddenly, and I went in the living room, and this horrific fight was going on between the two of them, Josh and the instigator. And I just I shut down. I panicked. I just all I could think is I had to get the kids away. My oldest was asleep already. My middle one, who had a downstairs bedroom, this woke him up. Josh was desperately trying to get the instigator out, away from me and away from the kids. I didn't know at the time that the instigator was high on meth, but I found out later when he told me later. It didn't really surprise me. It was not a fair fight. Josh was pound for pound the strongest man I ever saw in my life. He was so incredibly strong. But the instigator was a lot bigger than him. It's one of the many things about their friendship that I saw the telltale signs that there's something wrong early on is when they were in a photograph together, you could see there was a problem. Most guys, if they're standing next to their guy friends, they'll just stand there normally, right? The instigator, he'd always hover over Josh, to emphasize how much taller he was, how much bigger he was. He couldn't just be in a photograph with him like a regular guy. He had to demean him just a little bit. So there's this giant fight going on. And I just got, all I could think as a mom was, I've got to get my kids away from this. And so I shut the door, I turned the rain machine up. My little boy started crying. I just didn't know what to do. I could hear in the next room Josh repeatedly saying things to the effect of, just go, just leave. And instigator refusing to leave. Josh confronting him about how when Josh had been stabbed a few weeks before, Josh knew that the instigator had set that up. I heard the dialogue of when he tried to take out Josh's eye. You know, some guys, they get in a fight with a friend of theirs. It's a fist fight. It's, you know, it's not fun, but that's all it is a fist fight. That's not what the instigator was interested in, though. He broke 5 of Josh's ribs, but he also disfigured his face. Josh had been stabbed in the face. It was a very bad stabbing. He almost lost his nose. He hit Josh in the stab wound. So the nose, which had been stitched back right here, it opened up. This opened up. You know, the hospital done a good job stitching Josh back together. And now that was all just destroyed. It was gone. He was gonna, when Josh did get his nose fixed, it was like part of it came down more than the rest. It was like a notch. And I know there was a degree of envy there. Josh liked to make jokes about how he was a pretty boy or he was so handsome. And so the instigator was doing what he could to make sure that that was not true anymore. He wanted permanent damage. That's what he was going for. And you know, Josh knew, he told me later, and I knew too, that if the instigator won that fight, he was going to come at me. Josh was the only thing standing between him and me. And quite possibly, he was going to kill me. That's what Josh was afraid of. It's what I was afraid of. So, like, if Josh was knocked out, that was just it. And I think it's really a testament to just how freaking tough Josh was, that even with 5 broken ribs, you know, he still got that guy out of the house that night. He still got that guy away from me and the kids. You know, I thought this incident would prove how violent the instigator was, that I was not making it up all these years. But he actually used this to his advantage. He convinced people that, because Josh wasn't a local, so he didn't have people that were gonna people weren't gonna speak up for him. He didn't have family up there. So the instigator actually told a lot of people that Josh was lying. He didn't have 5 broken ribs. I was lying. And because he's charismatic, they believed him. You know, we had hospital records. I think Josh even wound up in an ambulance at some point from this. And still, it didn't matter that we had these hospital records. This guy was just that convincing. You have no idea what it's like to see that kind of wound, that kind of injury, and to be there when it happens. And the perpetrator, who's intentionally doing permanent damage, they are able to talk their way out of it. And not just talk their way out of it. He had people talking his way out of it for him. He had people saying, you know, can you believe Josh and Galena, that they're saying he did all this terrible stuff, and it never happened. It's like, you look at the x-rays. You know, a few days after this, the enabler and douchebag came to my house, and I looked them both in the face and said, he is out of his mind on meth. He broke 5 of Josh's ribs. I don't want to have anything to do with him right now. Like, I want nothing to do with him. I was terrified of being alone with him. And I couldn't believe that both of them, from there on out, did everything in the world to help coerce me into a situation where I would be alone with him, to force me into a situation where I'd have to be alone with him. You know, douchebag especially, he's one of those guys that says he's a feminist. This was the most unequal situation in the world. I'm 5'3", I weigh 125 pounds. The instigator is a big guy. He's really big. And you know, I couldn't believe that someone who says that he's all for women's rights would try to force me into a situation where I'd have to be alone with this guy after he did something like this. And similarly, you know, we had a mutual friend, and the instigator was able to convince him that he said to me that I'd enabled his methamphetamines addiction. If that friend's watching this, because he's also a big guy, say, how the hell did I do that? I wasn't the one buying the meth. I wasn't the one going to the dealers. I had nothing to do with his meth addiction. That was 100% his choice. You know, when someone's an addict, they don't get to go point fingers at whoever in their life actually tried to help get them into rehab. And that's what I did for years. I tried to do everything to get him clean. And in the end, he turns around and tries spinning it as though him hurting other people is my fault because I wasn't able to, like, get him clean. It wasn't my responsibility. It's never the responsibility of anyone but the addict to get clean. But again, I'm going to say, I'm a little woman. He's a big man. What the heck was I supposed to do? How was I supposed to force him to do anything? How especially could I force him to do anything when you have multiple people backing up that even when he breaks someone's ribs and disfigures them, he's somehow the victim? Like, he came away from this with, like, I think, bloody lips or something like that. He had no serious damage. You know, if they had said Josh fell down the stairs and that's how he broke his ribs, I get it. Maybe people could believe that story, but they really spun it as this was just all not true. That Josh didn't have these horrible, horrible, horrible injuries. And the fact that they were successfully able to convince people of that, I just felt so incredibly trapped and terrified because there was no consequences for what happened to him. Doing that to Josh, it was like no consequences at all. And Josh was really scared to try to pursue justice on that note because, you know, someone related to the instigator works for the police department, and even though I thought that was a good man, Josh was scared. He was scared. He didn't know how this was going to work for him. He especially didn't know how it was going to work for him when that powerful person, that powerful woman, who has all that influence in Mendocino County, was really backing the instigator, that this didn't happen. And she was fighting so hard to put me in a position where I was going to be forced to go make peace with him. Suck it up. Smile through being terrified. And, you know, Come on, ladies, you know when a man wants to hit you, right? And you just smile through it, because what the heck else can you do? I really hope that Josh's parents release his medical records at some point, so that those people have to be confronted with what the instigator actually did to Josh. And they have to live with that. Because, I wonder how the enabler squares it with herself as a so-called godly woman. That there is another woman who doesn't have her son, who doesn't have the son that called her every day, talked to her every day because of decisions that the enabler did. Because the enabler could have backed off. This was not like she made one bad decision. She helped stalk us for 6 months. She did everything to force me back into a room alone with this guy. Because she had her eye on that precious, precious thing that I wouldn't give up. How does she square it with herself that there is another mother out there that holds her accountable for her son's murder? Where Josh is, I know it's a good place, a beautiful place. It's a place that reflects all the good he did on earth. For missing and murdered girls, for helping pass out Narcan, for helping women learn to defend themselves. He's in a good place now. I have no doubt of that. And that is a good place the enabler thinks she's going to someday. Nope. She helped murder another woman's son, is what she did. She helped send Josh on the road to his death. I wonder how she squares that with herself when she plans for life everlasting. There will be accountability at some point. For everybody who lied about Josh having broken ribs, there will be freaking accountability.